Bist die Ruhe der Frieden mild.
Hello and welcome back to our Closer Look series examining some of the music that we perform here in the Cathedral of the Rockies. Today we're going to be talking about a piece of Lieder or song by a German composer from the Romantic era called Franz Schubert. Schubert died in 1828. This song, Du bist die Ruhe, or You Are the Rest, was composed in 1823, so pretty late in his life. Schubert wrote hundreds of Lieder, hundreds of these songs. He was an incredible tunesmith. He could write the most memorable tunes, and the accompaniments are often characters in the narratives that he's using the songs to tell the stories of. So this particular song was set to a titleless poem by a poet named Rückert, Friedrich Rückert, I believe I'm saying that correctly. Later, the poet changed the poem to have a title as one of the lines in the poem, but Schubert just used the title of the piece as the first line of the poem, Du bist die Ruhe, or You Are Rest. So we're going to look at a couple of the devices that Schubert uses to show us through the music how the poet's subject is the subject of rest. So the very beginning, with our fabulous accompanist, David Young, sounds like this. Thank you. It's so beautiful, it's so very simple, and it's so very peaceful. Now the voice comes in right after that, and the accompaniment does not really change. Now if you're listening to that accompaniment, you'll hear it's simple because we don't kind of stray very far from what we call our tonic, our home bass key, which in this case, in my voice, is B flat, which is, and we stay right around there. Now, in this period of history, composers are starting to mess around with all sorts of different harmonies, different chromatic textures we call really tight-knit, crunchy chords, but not in this case, because the subject of this poem is rest, is peace. We never really stray very far from our home base. Now, when the voice enters, the poem states, Du bist die Ruhe, der Friede mild, die Sehnsucht du und was sie stillt, which means you are repose, you are rest, you are peace, you are longing, and everything that stills it. And the voice sings like this. We'll start right there.
Du bist die Ruhe der Frieden mild, die Sehnsucht du und was sie stillt.
Thank you. So you hear the vocal line doesn't change notes very often. Dee da 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 da. Just a very simple, very restful melody. Now, Schubert uses a technique called text painting to illustrate some of the words in this. So right after that, we get the words Ich weihe dir voll Lust und Schmerz. Full of joy and grief, I consecrate to you. And it sounds like
Ich weihe dir voll Lust und Schmerz.
So, as we start talking about joy and grief, we finally get some different harmony. And can you play that diminished chord for us? That crunch, that's what I'm talking about. Now, the song is what's known as strophic, which is to say that it repeats the same exact pattern. So the second verse, you'll notice, is the same exact pattern as the very first verse. The accompaniment changes very little, if at all. The third strophe, we call this modified strophic. We finally get some interesting harmony. So at the text, Dies Augen sind von deinem Glanz, allein erhellt, o fühl es ganz, which means, the temple of my eyes is lit by your holiness or your radiance, and you fill it. Your glance fills my this eye temple, so to speak, fully. And we are on that next part there, David. And it sounds like
Dies Augen zählt von deinem Glanz allein erhellt.
So finally we get some excitement. Finally we are full and we are radiant. So even within this piece we experience this joy. The very last thing I want to talk about is how the piece ends. Now normally, in the vocal line resolves to what we again call the tonic or the home bass, the B flat in this case, at the very end of every single strophe. However, at the very end of this piece, Schubert decides to leave it on the fifth or the dominant of this key. So the voice sings one note and doesn't change, doesn't resolve, and kind of drifts out into a very kind of ethereal sense of peace while the piano finishes the song, like I said, being a character in this little drama. So if you would, David, from the very last full fugue.
O fülles Ganz.
And the singer ends in silence, and what could be more restful than silence? Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to David Young, and please join us for more closer looks at our music here at the Cathedral of the Rockies.